Welcome to another chapter in designing outdoor living space with SoftPlan. The model has grown quite a bit since chapter one, and at this stage, we are now looking at a livable area that includes multiple decks, screened-in porch, two different patios at varying levels, and in the previous couple of classes, we designed an outdoor kitchen as well as a fire pit area. And where we want to go in this chapter is actually going to be fleshing out a few of the more subtle designs that actually help bring the model to a close and even soften up some of the hardscapes. So this is going to include the addition of some planting beds that are going to be put in here. We're also going to deal with some outdoor furniture designs. And then we're also going to wrap this up by adding some larger vegetation like trees, and we're going to fence the area in and just show off that part of the site. And so to begin with, we're going to move over to the kitchen area and patio area, just this area in between, and we're going to begin to add some landscaping there. And so what I'd like to do is move into the site plan mode, which is where we're going to be working. And from here, we're actually going to wind up extending these staircases down to this area here. And then from there, we'll be able to go in and add a planting bed, as well as a curved planting bed that will follow this part of the landscape. And then we'll be able to go in and add the vegetation to it. And so as I take a look at this, I've got the plan view, and I'm actually going to also break out into a new vertical tab group the 3D model. And that's going to allow me to zoom in to this area here so that we can actually see both the staircase, that's the two steps down from the patio, and what we're going to be doing with that. And as I look at it in the site plan mode, I can actually zoom it up here, and then we can make the changes one and have it reflected on the other. And so using the adjust item feature, I would actually be able to come in and inside the site mode, which is where the steps actually reside, I could adjust them as far as their width is concerned. And so in this case, after selecting adjust item and positioning myself in the actual site plan mode of the drawing, you can see that as I adjust it, it's going to begin to update the 3D model. And from here, I can see in terms of the spacing and so on, and this is the benefit of having both the 2D and the 3D open, is you can see what how the model is actually going to unfold. And so in this case here, I'm going to edit this staircase, which currently right now has a width of say 12 inches, which is what we can see. And as I edit this, I could maybe make this a little bit deeper, or wider, if you will, and do the same thing with this one. And as I do that, just to make this a more steady or I guess gentle staircase going up with much wider treads, I can also have the ability now to move this staircase forward just a little bit because I've got that much more depth as far as their dimensions are concerned. Once I have done this and I've got my stairs in place per se with the 15-inch, and I've managed to square this area off here now, I can come in and actually begin to sketch in where I want the planting bed. And so under the still within site mode, and under draw, you can come into site work, and this will give you the ability to select a planting bed. Now the planting bed at this point, as I begin to sketch it in, I'll have the option of both line and spline. And I'm going to use the line and trace very angular type shapes to begin with, and then in time I'll come back and modify to set up certain lines to mimic or adhere to the same radius as the curbs that we're running this up against. And so when I select the line option, I'll just simply position my cursor where I want to begin, which will be, where the stair meets with the curb, and click. And then I'll move my cursor left to right and click. At this point, I can hit the F12 function key to turn off the full ortho snap and move into 15-degree increments, and then click. And this is what I mean. As I'm clicking and drawing this, you can see at this stage right now that I'm clearly drawing straight lines. I'll select the F12 key a second time, which fully unlocks the cursor, and then click. It places the soil, if you will, or the planting bed, in the position of the where I've drawn it. And as you can see, as far as the curvature and so on, it's actually all just straight lines. And so just depending on if I zoom this out a little bit using the 3D camera, we can see what we have at this point. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and select planting bed and edit edge. Now I know that the curve of this line over here is from a previous edit is sitting at 11.7 feet, and so as I select that as my radius and then reverse the center, that's going to move it up or to follow what we've got as far as the curve of the curve. And of course with a adjustment, I'll be able to adjust that right to the curve itself as far as my trace is concerned. And so I can do the same thing over here. I can edit this planting bed edge. So by right clicking, it pulls up the locate menu for me to begin with. Rather than picking curb or property, I'll pick the planting bed and then edit its edge. And then once again, I could set its radius up to be 13 feet. And as I zoom this out in plan, and as I also view this inside 3D, I can see what this is doing. I can edit this after I have modified the radius and so on, and I'm just going to fit this site to fit to the ground, which is going to allow it to actually follow the curvatures of the ground itself. And so we now have that planting bed in place. Okay. And so as we move forward with this, then we'll be able to go in and modify or change both elevations on that according to what the shot points are, as well as different thicknesses and so on of the individual poly. And so as we begin to zoom this around and look at it in both 2D and 3D, we can see that it's conforming to the curves of the patio. And carrying forward, I may want to even edit this front edge here, and as I do that, I can set a radius up for it. Now, just a note, if I take a look at the line length and I see that it's almost around 16 feet, give or take the 15.9, I would need to set the radius of this up to be greater than half that distance in order to set that up. So in this case here, I'm going to type in 12 feet and hit the reverse center, which will actually protrude that out for me like so. This may necessitate, as I'm beginning to work with this, of wanting to go in and add some retaining walls just to help with erosion and so on. And I'm going to go back to using some of the walls that I defined already. And so as I change into drawing mode, the drawing mode will give me the access to be able to sketch the wall. This is going to be a little bit of review, but as you'll see, when I change into the drawing mode to sketch walls, I no longer have access to the visibility as far as where the planting bed is. And so in this case here, I may need to come in then through options and visible items. And when I come into visible items in the drawing mode, I can select the group visibility for site, and then from here turn on planting bed. And by doing that, it's going to show the visibility of the planting bed, which will now allow me to sketch in the retaining walls. And so at this stage, I'm going to select draw, and when I select curved wall, I'm going to pick the start and radius. Selecting that will give me access to the wall list, and the various wall types that are available or have already been drawn on the site will be listed at the top. And so in this case here, I'm going to select the 4-inch stone veneer, which I used earlier on the kitchen. And so as I zoom this up, and this is actually kind of a valuable point, notice that when I'm drawing this, I don't stay at this zoom scale, which makes accuracy and picking my start and end points, much more difficult. But rather what I will do is zoom up where I'd like to start a wall. And then in this case, I'll hit my F12 function key to unlock it, and hitting it once moves it into 15-degree increments, and selecting it a second time is actually going to give me a free floating cursor. And then once again I can zoom to where I want to set that radius. So start point, end point, set radius, and then click. And it places the wall in there, and I can see it inside the 3D. At this stage now, I'm going to edit this, and I can actually change things like the offset. So I'm going to offset it down in plan view, and then I may set the height to something that's not quite as tall, and so I've now set this to be 8 inches to follow that there. And so I'll click OK, and once again, still inside the actual plan view, I can select the curved same wall. And in this case now, once again, I'm going to zoom to click for the endpoint. I'm going to, pan out and then, click for the start point, and then holding the mouse wheel down and a combination of zoom will allow me to find where I want to place this wall, and we see that it's going to be placed all the way across. Now in this case here, because of the slope of the property and what's happening, as this wall holds the same offset in height as the previous wall drawn in there for surrounding this, we can see actually that the wall winds up, going above the ground. And so and the issue is, if you try to edit this wall and you change this offset, let's say to 8 inches down, it's going to take the top end of the wall, and then you might wind up modifying the height of this to get that right, and then it becomes a little taller over here. So what I'm going to do is instead, and I'm just going to put these values back to what they were, is I'm going to break this wall at the midpoint and then step down the second portion over here. So once the wall is drawn, and I'll just zoom this out to show you what we have at this point, I'm going to zoom this up and select the erase and part erase. And what the part erase will allow me to do is basically at the midpoint of the wall, I'm just going to click, and then I'm just going to slightly move my cursor right to left and click, and that actually breaks the wall into two. And I did this just to show you so you can visibly see it, but realistically I could have left the cursor in the same spot and just done the double click, and it would have broken the wall at that point. But what this will allow me to do now is actually edit this wall over here, and we're going to offset this, let's say down the 8 inches like I talked about, while keeping the height at 8 inches over here. And we could do that. We could have put multiple breaks in as we were working with this all the way across, but that's at least going to step the wall down for us, so that as I come in now using the adjust item feature under the move and adjust item, I could then adjust this wall to meet with this, and we no longer have the break. And so that's how you could step the wall all the way across as far as the plan is concerned. And so once again, coming back now, I could select the draw curved wall. I'm going to pick the same 4-inch stone veneer wall, and I'm going to click where I want to start, and I'm going to remove my function or my lock key using the F12 function key and click, and then I will set the radius where I need it to be and set that wall up. And so now I can edit this wall and give it the same 8-inch height to match with what we're doing. And so just as you work your way around, you could simply set up retaining walls in that same way, and a straight wall could just be added across here just by inside the site plan mode. Instead of curved wall this time, we'll pick the 4-inch stone veneer, we'll click on this wall and then run it across, and we get that set up inside the plan view. And so that sets up our planting bed on the actual between the actual patios themselves. And as I zoom this out a little bit, we can actually see what we have. And so now I'm going to do the same thing where we're just going to add a patio or a planting bed out here, and then we can go ahead with actually adding vegetation to this. So picking up at this stage now and zooming in here, what we're going to do is inside the site plan mode, I'm just going to zoom this area up. And these little symbols here, if you'll recall in the previous chapter, were just little tiki torch lights that I threw in there. And so I'm going to come in and I'm doing this again from within site mode. And that's kind of the key here, is just flipping back and forth between the modes of where information is going to be found. And I'll pick the site work, and this time I'll pick the planting bed, and once again I'm going to select the line option. And so depending on where I'd like to sketch this, I'm just going to click to start, and I'm going to run it clear across to this side and click. And that's a line that's eventually going to have to be modified to have the same radius as the outer curve that's there. But then just simply using the F12 function key, I can begin to design where I want the basic profile or outline of the site or of the planting bed itself. And so once I have done this, I can then come in, and this is where we can do a number of things. The first thing I can do is edit this back line here, and I can change the radius. And so again, this is just a case of knowing where the what the dimension is by editing the curve itself. And so in this case here, I've modified that and it set the curvature up for us. And I could do the same thing if I wanted to edit a simple line right here. We see the line length, and if I come in and modify the radius, depending on what I make that dimension, okay, is actually going to set that up for us on that line as far as the radius is concerned. And so I'm just going through and editing a few of these to suit, and then reversing their center. Now, other things that you can do is under the tools option, we could simply come in and use the curved fillet. And the curved fillet, when you click on it, allows you to select a couple of different lines, and at this stage you could then set up what that radius is going to be. So in this case here, if I were to click this and set the radius to 2 feet, okay, or even greater than that, let's say 8 feet, as I do that, it's going to gently slope that out. And so again, if I select here and here, and I modify this down to, let's say, 6 feet, we can see we've got the curve. And in this case here, I can always use the fillet tool after the fact to make sure I get two lines properly joined on the drawing. And so continuing through with this, I'm just going to use that same curved fillet and modify some of these lines to where I want them to be. And then finally, I would just edit the planting bed, and it can always tell it to fit to the site. And so once again, we now get a planting bed out here on the right hand side of the actual patio. And so with the two planting beds in place now, we'll have the option of going in and actually adding landscape. Now, when it comes time to add the landscape, there is a couple of different ways of tackling this. And so inside the 3D, I'm actually going to zoom this area up here to begin with. And we're going to start by adding a tree here. And I want to just discuss a little bit about the various types of vegetation within the program. So as we're looking at this inside 2D, and we go to the draw option followed by symbol, as we begin to scroll down to where we've got the vegetation, you'll see that we have an option for billboard trees. And when you click on the billboard tree, in essence, as I'm trying to show it here in the profile or the preview, you'll actually see that the tree is really just a single line or a plane. And in essence, you draw the plane, and then as you do that, the tree itself is pasted onto that plane. So if I pick this cedar tree right here, position my cursor where I want the tree to be drawn, and then click, as I look at it inside the view here on the 3D, you'll actually see it's just a single plane, and the easiest way to see that is when I pop up and look at it from the top. I'm going to change into textured mode to give a better perspective of that tree. And so as I do that and I zoom this up right here, we can see the tree is fairly detailed because it really is just a picture that has been pasted on there. And then we cut out the any of the background to give that tree that representation. These trees are great because they actually generate relatively quickly. There's only two surfaces, the front and the back to them, and as you can see, when you rotate your camera around, the tree is going to follow. And so if you're trying to fill up a large area with trees, this is an ideal way to do it in terms of getting some sort of a forested background per se on on what you're looking at. Now to go along with this, if I come in through the draw option and this time select symbol, and that was the tree billboard, I go down to the tree high surface count. And as I click into the tree high surface count, I'll be able to go in and you can see there are various trees that are here. And here I'm going to pick the ash tree. And I'm drawing this inside 3D, and so I need to click to start and click to finish. And the difference between the ash tree and the billboard tree is this is truly a three-dimensional symbol. And so these types of symbols are a lot more detail to them, a lot more surface count, can slow down your model. However, the depth value that you get from them is unparalleled. And so what you'll really want to do here is, in a lot of cases, I will use billboard type trees in the background, and then I will use these high surface count trees in the foreground. And so use inside the drawing mode on the left hand side, I'm just going to come in and take out the billboard tree to remove that, and then move this tree into place. And I may even, using the move and the rotate item, just rotate this tree a little bit to get it into a slightly different position for what we're doing. And we can see this tree now adds a great deal of depth and also privacy to this back patio that we've got going on here. And so with that tree in place, I would then be able to go in and fill out the background on this option. And so this may be a case where you use the three-dimensional high surface count tree in order to create this option right here. And then coming back in through symbol, we've got medium surface count trees, which are a little bit lower in terms of surface counts, okay, and are going to generate a little bit faster for you. And so I could again select a different type of tree, and so we see what we have here. And then depending on where I want to place this, I'm going to drop it over here to the left hand side. And as I take a look, we've now created a couple of different tree options for the model. And so going forward now, we will use the combination of these types of options as well as billboard trees to be able to go in and set up what our landscaping is going to look like. And so with a couple of different three-dimensional trees drawn in there, I can now zoom in and begin to add billboard type flowers just to surround this. And so I'm just going to come in through the draw and symbol. And as I come in here and I move down into the tree billboard, you'll see that we've got various shrubs as well as plants that we can use as well. And so you'll just simply go through and determine what it is that you're looking for. We've even got things like rocks that could be used in here. So in my case, I'm going to select the plant, and I'm just going to scroll down through the various options that are here, keeping in mind that these plants themselves, okay, as we're selecting them, they're actually listed alphabetically right now. And so I'm just taking a look for something like a flower option, and as I do that, I find the or Strawberry's Paper Daisy. And so once I've done this, I can click to add one in there, and then using the copy command, we would then be able to copy multiple placements of these daisies around the actual planting bed. And we can add lots of many of these, and as the more we add, the certainly the more full, I guess, the garden would be as to what we're doing. And so again, doing the same thing, I could add vegetation over here to the right hand side. And so with a little bit of a time lapse right here, we're actually able to see that we've got our patio as well as our gardens and our retaining walls in place. And so as we pull back and we take a look at this model, we can begin to see that We've got a lot of the living space set up. We're going to go in and add some custom furniture here and perhaps an eating area up on the deck and even some furniture inside the screened-in porch. And then we're going to finish this out today with this lesson by going in and adding a fence and perhaps a play area in the background. And so as I return to the site plan mode to begin to lay some of this out, I will come in through the draw option and symbol. And when you select the symbol option, and I'm going to come down into the list of manufacturer symbols that are here. And when you get into the manufacturer, selecting the SoftPlan Plus will take you into the high-end symbols that are available to you as a SoftPlan Plus subscriber. And so as we come into the library called Maisons du Monde, we can actually select from this list the list of outdoor symbols that are available there. And these libraries are constantly updated, so as these manufacturers release more symbols, we'll be able to go in and SoftPlan will continue to update these for you so that you're always dealing with the most up-to-date custom symbols that are available. I'm going to select a couple of different symbols for use here, and so as I zoom this up on my drawing screen, I'll just position my cursor for placement of the sofa and add that, and then we'll do the same thing with a couple of chairs, and then finally some sort of a table. And of course these can all be moved around relative to what you're doing after the fact. And so a review of these inside 3D, it shows that we've actually got some, seating area right here. Once I see this in 3D, I can see I move a few things around for spacing. And so once I have this set up here, I'm going to move upstairs onto the deck and just go ahead and place some sort of a seating area up here, in the main floor plan. And so selecting the main floor plan and zooming this up, I can select symbol, and this is where I could just do a search for a specific manufacturer, and as I get in here and click on that manufacturer, I'll see their host of symbols that they have available for use. And so once again, I could then come in and select, from the patio dining sets for this specific manufacturer. I could then position my cursor where I want to place this, and when I do that, I can just click to set it down and have it placed on the actual drawing. And as I move that into place, it will be set up for me. And so as I once again look at this inside 3D, we now have a patio set up here. And so this is just really all we're doing now at this point is adding detail to the drawing to create that outdoor, feeling for what we're doing for a living space. And so again, I'll add something else over here, and things like plants and potters, etc., could all be finished in due time. The same thing could happen over inside the sunroom, where I basically just already added some furniture in there to mimic what we're doing. Pushing ahead, using the site plan mode, I would like to come in and actually fence off our backyard. And so when we come in through draw and we select site work, we'll be able to select from the fence option what we're going to do. And so there are a number of different fence options that are available. You can see as I begin to scroll through these, all right, we've got different options like chain link fences and so on, various types of metal fencing, vinyl fencing options, and then finally we've got our just standard wood fences. And so if depending on what we're attempting to do, and we can just pick the option. In this case, I'm going to go with a privacy fence, and so as I do that and I click OK on this, I'll simply zoom my cursor in where I'd like the privacy fence to begin and click. Using the tape measure as a guide, I can accurately place this, or I can always dimension it after the fact. But for right now, I'm just going to simply sketch in by eye where I'd like to place a privacy fence, and when I've sketched the perimeter of the backyard, I will right click. And as I take a look at this inside 3D, we will now see that we've got a privacy fence that's running around the backyard. And so as I zoom this up and away, we can see there's our backyard, and there's all of our, outdoor living area that we're going to be building around. And so the final thing that I may want to do, in addition to perhaps adding a little bit of landscaping, is perhaps even adding a children's area in the backyard. And so this can be done using a combination of site options as well as some of the symbols that are in there. And so if I come into the drawing itself and I pick symbol, and I'm just going to do a quick search for swing set. And so as I begin to type this in, we've got a generic one that's there, or if we prefer to use manufacturers, we've actually got a, both youth and smaller set here from a specific company. And so here I could pick the swing set that I want to use, and I'm just going to position my cursor inside the backyard and click to start. Select the F12 function key and click to finish, and it places it at that angle. And so again, we could add a couple of other options if we wanted, as far as for our backyard. And so once we have added what we're going to do as far as our outdoor options are concerned, I can take a look at it inside the 3D. We see the symbols being placed, and then we may want to mulch around this area here. And so changing into site mode and zooming this area up, I'm going to select the draw, site work, planting bed, something we've already done. Now there's two different ways this could be done. Obviously we could come in and place some railroad ties and just or a stone wall and get that off. Or in this case, I'm just going to select the spline option and sketch more of an organic type feel for our playground area. And so I'm just, every time I click, I'll just be able to see it's drop down a point, and then it artificially creates the curve. And so after this has been done, I can edit this planting bed, and I can come in here and fit this to the ground and select OK. And so once I have done this, I can at that stage then take a look at this inside the 3D option. And as I do, we see we've got our planting bed around our playground area. Finally, just to wrap this up, we're going to go ahead and add a few larger trees in there. This can be done both within the 2D and the 3D, but as I pop into the site plan mode, I can select draw symbol. And from here, I can begin to select from the high surface count trees what it is that I want to draw. And so in this case here, I will simply select that I want to pick the magnolia tree, and so we've got our preview there of what the tree is going to look like, and just simply click to start and then click to set the direction for the tree. And so again, I could select a couple of other different types of trees depending on what we're doing and as far as our landscaping is concerned. And so just moving my cursor through the different selections that are available, we can add these, whether they're on the inside or the outside of the fence. And in some cases, some of this is just really being done to help frame what we're doing. And so as I do this and I take a look, we now have our landscaping trees that are going to be in there. These will help us to be able to cast shadows and so on as well in due time. And so that brings to a close what we're going to be doing as far as adding some of the landscaping and so on to this model. In our next chapter, when we we're going to go in and to actually take a look at assigning the textures in all of the 3D options to take this from a textured model to something that's got much more photorealistic settings. But until now, there really wasn't a great deal of need to be there until we get all of the forms and shapes set out.